It's Friday, and you know what that means. I'm going to be taking a look at your failures and seeing what we can do. And there's actually one here I want your help on. Let's get into it. As always, every Friday, we talk about print failures. And if you want to get your fail on PrintFailFriday, make sure you tweet at us, you tag us on Instagram, and you use the hashtag PrintFail or PrintFailFriday. We'll have all of that on the screen for you to take a look at. Up to you which ones you use, but you gotta get those fails to us, because otherwise I go trolling on Reddit, and some of the fails are pretty interesting. Let's jump into this one. Clumpy film printing around objects and prints failing with Mini 4K. The Mini 4K is a resin printer made by Frozen. We'll link to it down in the description. It is a competitor to the Elegoo Mars 2 Pro. They're basically in the same price point, build size, all that kind of stuff. But they've got some issues. And I have actually seen this before. They did provide us the resin settings. This is Lychee Slicer. We went over Lychee Slicer in a previous video, and they are getting ready to release a big update. So I'm going to be getting ready because I really like Lychee Slicer. We've basically converted over to it 100%. But yeah, get subscribed if you want to see more content on Lychee Slicer, and we'll card to the video all about Lychee Slicer and my first look at it for you to go take a check. Now, they're using 4 bottom layers, 14-second exposure time. I'm like a 8 to 10 with like a 30-second exposure time for mono printers. I really want to make sure that sticks. And if I overexpose the first few layers, it's normally a raft anyways, and then support material, so I don't really care all that much, but it does appear that it sticks. Now, what we have here to me is a classic screen error. What I would recommend in this case is to take the vat off, take off the build plate, put a piece of paper over the screen, and run this print again. I would hedge a bet that you're going to see some pixels jumping around like crazy on your screen. And if that's the case, go ahead, take your printer apart, reseat the connector for the screen, and if that still doesn't fix it, well, it's time to get a new screen. The user has said, so far I've tried re-leveling the Z-axis multiple times. It's not going to do anything. Changing the FEP twice, not gonna do anything, and a multitude of different settings. And like, you can tell this person's been through a lot. Changing FEP on a resin printer takes like 25 minutes. It takes a long time. It's like something like 30 freaking screws. It's a ton of work. And I feel for this user because I've been down this road, and it's a crappy road to be down. So I'm sorry that you're going through this, my dude. I'm sorry. In addition, I've just started printing again after around 8 months, so even after shaking the resin for around 5 to 6 minutes, I'm not sure if it could just be an old resin thing. It's not. I don't think it is. I believe that you have a screen problem. And this, to me, is where the real frustration comes in. I can't find any other examples of this issue no matter what terms I search for it with, so any help is greatly appreciated. This one is one that I want your opinions on. Was doing consistently great prints, but then decided to change bed. Previous Benchies for reference and further details in comments. That ain't good. That ain't good. That ain't good. That ain't good. Nope. Those, on the other hand, are pretty good. Those are like A- Benchies, and the reason I'm saying A-, you can see the infill through the perimeters, which means your infill overlap a little bit more than it should be, or you don't have enough perimeters. Little trap there, no big deal. There are a lot of opinions here. Let's look at the further details. All my prints were consistently coming out great. Golden black Benchy for reference, albeit some minor stringing, which I have been trying to fix. I was happy with the current printer settings, stock under 3, and I feel that I had bed leveling sorted. I first noticed significant issues when I changed the stock bed to a magnetic one, which I removed within an hour due to poor adhesion of lower magnetic base to printer bed. So I'm guessing it didn't stick all that well. I feel something I did too much force on bed. When changing back to stock bed is the issue, but I am not sure. I have since replaced the nozzle, cleaned out the hot end, tightened all screws as well. At a loss here, would appreciate some pointers, please. While I appreciate this person went through, replaced their nozzle, cleaned out the hot end, went through, made sure all the screws were tight. I don't necessarily think that's their problem. I appreciate that this comment is here, that they're saying we don't see a print in the gold or black, and it could just be a crappy filament. This is not unheard of in this industry. It does happen. I would think this gray filament is wet, and that could be the difference. That is where I stop agreeing. I do not believe that this is wet filament because they ran some more tests, and this is nice. These are bed leveling tests. Yeah, your bed's not level. Don't really care. It's fine. That is the same black that they used in that first print. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I present to you not wet filament. Now, this is back from February. I have had filament sitting out in the open. Now, this is air conditioned, but it's Florida. It's basically a swamp. And that means like ambient humidity at any point in time is something between 40 and 60%. That's a lot of water in the air. We do notice some extra stringing when the filament has been sitting out for a while, but I've had filament on that back rack for years, and we don't have those kinds of problems. So just gonna put that out there. I don't think this is it. I think is that they have an extruder issue. To get into the nitty gritty, let's talk about an extruder and a stepper motor. Stepper motors are normally a D shaft. You can see that there is a flat spot on the shaft right there, right here. And when you have an extruder gear, it's normally put on and then it is tightened with a grub screw onto the flat so that it stays on as the stepper motor turns. I believe that this gear has come loose, but not enough to fully spin, just loose. And that means when the printer is trying to do a retraction, the gear is not moving. It's just basically removing all the backlash from the motor, and it might grab it a little bit, but it's not going to grab it a lot of it, which for a stock Ender 3, which is a Bowden style 3D printer, you need a fair bit of retraction to keep it from stringing. And the reason that I am going with this is, well, the bottom of this print looks pretty good. We've got a couple little issues of under extrusion, but it's up here where we start to see signs. This to me is not stringing. Stringing looks like thin lines of hair. This appears to be a printer that's not retracting. And especially on a Bowden printer where you have a buildup of material and back pressure, when you go to move it, if you're not retracting properly, you're gonna have a bad time. This to me is an extruder gear that's not catching filament. And whether that's because it's all messed up and there's a bunch of gunk on it and it's not catching the filament, or the grub screw is loose, I'm fairly certain that that's what this is caused by. And the reason I'm going after this is how consistent these fails are. If we look, this failure would be in line with how the printer prints and what it's printing at the time. If my idea of the grub screw being loose is correct, we would see a reasonable pattern of a couple of layers every now and then that aren't filled in properly. We do see that. Now, it could be a nozzle clog, but a nozzle clog does not make up for this crazy amount of stringing. And an issue where the printer is not retracting properly and then reinserting the filament properly does make sense here. I want to know your opinions down in those comments because I'm not 100% certain. This is one of the first times in PrintFailFriday where I've been stumped. But this one's pretty weird. I don't think it's wet filament. One of the next few fails is going to be wet filament, so make sure you stay tuned. I don't think this is wet filament. I want to know what you guys think. I don't know if I have an answer other than check to make sure your extruder is moving properly and that gear is turning properly. But otherwise, I don't know. I'd probably have to see a video of the extruder, whether or not it's moving, and I'd have to hear it to see if it's maybe skipping steps or something. This one comes via our Discord. I want to give a big shout out to one of our patrons, Jimmy Johansson. 1, thank you for your support. 2, thank you for this. This is from a Swedish Facebook group, so I can't read it. Jimmy was awesome and translated everything for us. There were 8 different answers for what the heck is going on with this print. Answer number 1, what printer do you have? They have a Creality CR10 Pro V2. Terrible naming scheme. Then someone said, oh, then you should upgrade the firmware. Some of the CR10S variants had an issue where they had a memory overflow, causing the printer to stutter, which could viably cause this. Someone says partial clog, increase temperature to max, and feed a few meters of filament. No, this printer is printing perfectly fine. This is not a clog. Turn off power loss recovery. What? No. If that's causing a memory leak, no, that's ridiculous. Google Z-Seam. That was a legitimate answer. What an asshole answer. That's just wrong. This is not a Z-Seam. I don't think it's a Z-Seam. Now, we could see some Z issues involved, but I don't believe this is a Z-Seam. And that's because, well, it's pretty randomized. And yes, you can have randomized Z's, but I don't think this is a Z-Seam. I believe it is a retraction issue. Turn off coasting and Cura Linear Advance can help. Coasting, I think, is what would solve this problem, but maybe not, because this does appear that it's on the front edge of the line rather than on the back edge. Baud rate in Octoprint with a lot of complex explanation. That's all that I was given for that. I know baud rate or baud rate can have some effect on print quality if there is a mismatch, but I've never seen like legitimate examples of big problems with it. If you know of one, email it to us. I know you can't put it in the comments. Email or tweet at us with it because I'd like to see what that looks like. And the last but not least, retraction problem causing a clog, use an acupuncture needle. The acupuncture needles that a lot of printers come with are made of steel. Your nozzle's made of brass. Think twice before you use that acupuncture needle because you will slowly wear out your nozzle by putting steel on brass. Steel is harder than brass, it will win. This is how this works. I believe that the closest answer is the Z-Seam, but to me, it's a retraction issue. Now, a CR10S Pro V2, as far as I'm aware, is a Bowden style 3D printer, and that means that it has to have a lot of retraction. But Bowden printers have an issue with ramming. And ramming is when you put way too much filament into the hot end way too quickly. And if you do this, you will end up with little zits on your prints because it's going to force some filament out of the hot end really, really fast rather than de-retracting it very slowly. I might recommend looking at slowing down your de-retraction and look at making sure that you do have a wipe and a coast involved in your retraction settings. That's my personal opinion. Let me know what you guys think. Another odd one, but I'm pretty certain this is a retraction-based problem. Thanks again to Jimmy. He's one of our awesome patrons, and if you want to hang out with us every single day, we are active in our Discord channel. Make sure you head over to patreon.com/3D Musketeers. And then my sponsor segues aren't as bad as this. As always, this episode is sponsored by us, 3D Musketeers. If you are looking to get your ideas out of your head and into your hands with full art-to-part rapid prototyping and product development using cool technology like 3D printers, hit us up. Links will be in the description. And if you want to support what we do directly so we can keep making cool videos like this with your help, head over to patreon.com/3D Musketeers where you can support us directly. And oh yeah, we're hiring! So if you want to come hang out with us, make cool for other people, and get paid probably not enough, we're working on that. All right, it's a small business. Give me a break. YouTube at 3dmusketeers.com. Send me an email, give me a resume, a portfolio, and a reason why you want to work with us. And let's get a freaking interview set up because, oh yeah, I do those interviews, every single one of them. We have one actually coming up tomorrow, right before the podcast. I'm excited because this person found us from the YouTube channel. You could be just like them. Why aren't you? Hit us up. What's causing those tiny blobs? Tiny bubbles. Tiny bubbles. What we have here, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is to me a classic example of wet filament. I know, I've always said it's never wet filament. This, I believe, is. We see little tiny dots, tiny bubbles, if you will, every now and then. They're not in a pattern or anything like that. This, to me, is indicative of wet filament. Now, what occurs with wet filament? A hot end, even a Creality hot end. Running PLA is going to be running 190 to 210 degrees centigrade. That is somewhere between 390 and 420 degrees Fahrenheit for you Yanks out there. Otherwise known as really f***ing hot. That will instantly boil water or any liquid that's inside of the material. So it's whether it's absorbed liquid, it was in liquid for whatever reason, it instantly vaporizes and evaporates. And when doing that, it expands greatly, very quickly in its volume. And what we have happen is we get little tiny pockets. Now, I would love to see a video of this running because I believe we're going to hear a little hissing, a little popping as the water quickly evaporates and causes, you know, little dots in the print. Technically, this does create a crappy surface. It's going to reduce your interlayer bonds a little bit, but it's just wet filament. It's relatively easy to solve. My preferred method is to use a food dehydrator. We'll link to a couple down in the description if you guys want to take a look at it, or a relatively decent toaster oven. The problem with using toaster ovens or regular ovens is that their temperature is not generally all that well maintained. And that can be an issue when you're dealing with something on a spool. Let's say it's a thermoplastic on a plastic spool. If it gets a little too hot, your spool gets melty, your filament gets melty, and you get a little melty because you're pissed off. And nobody likes that. So if you are going to dry your filament, make sure you do it right. My preference, food dehydrator. It's tough to beat convection when you're dealing with this. And electric heat, in my opinion, is the best way to do it because one of the byproducts of gas as a heat is a little bit of moisture. So be careful about that. It can be another trap. Now you can put it in a thing of desiccant, but you will need to basically cover this thing in desiccant and vacuum seal it for a long time to get that water out of the filament. And you will have to consistently change out the desiccant because if you don't, the desiccant's going to absorb the water and it's still going to keep the same humidity in there over time. So it'll work a little bit, but eventually you saturate that desiccant and that's all that it will do. The best way to do it, in my opinion, convection. Convection, better. I don't believe this is a low quality material. One of the commenters said it could be a low quality material. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I agree. You can see where the filament has boiled and popped. It's not common to me that we actually see a real wet filament example. This, in my opinion, is a real wet filament example. So there you go. All your other reasons where people say it could be wet filament, if you don't see stuff like this, it's probably not wet filament. Crazy. I know. It's like sometimes people don't know what they're talking about. I may not know what I'm talking about. If you think I'm wrong, let me know in those comments. This comes, regrettably, by the way of one of our staff members, Justin. You all know him from the podcast every now and then. He is there to support us. But sometimes Justin has a bad time. Now, this is not Justin's printer, but Justin has been overseeing this machine. This belongs to his professor. If you thought the last Blob of Doom was bad, you ain't seen nothing yet. This thing is, oh my god, bad. This is why you don't leave printers unattended. You verify that that first layer looks good, because this first layer does not look good. Justin, I blame you for this. This is your fault. And I can do that because you can't argue with me, because this is a pre-recorded video. I love you, dude, and I'm glad that you helped them out. But yeah, bad news bears. This thing was so heavy and hot that it actually fell and was continuing to print. You can see there's a lot of excess material wrapped around that hot end. That is no fun. He was able to cut a big chunk of it off. I hoped you saved that. That'd be a really cool little trophy to put in like a cabinet of failure. But we can see that that thermistor don't look like it's having a good time and is likely dead. And like we said previously, have spare thermistors, have spare heaters, have spare hot ends. Because especially in a school environment, this happened at Justin's school, you don't want to have this happen. Now, Justin is following proper protocol. Heat the hell out of it and let it just melt on its own. The rest of it, you can generally get. Now, again, you might break a thermistor wire, you might break a heater wire, but that beats, well, having a completely dead printer. There is your final tally. I'm going to go with Justin 0, Blob of Doom at least 1. It looks like they were messing around with the old acupuncture needle. Don't know if that's going to do anything. Not in this case. I don't think so. But if this printer didn't have a heater sock, it better damn well have one now. Bit of a bummer. Not much you can do about this. I do see some glue on the bed. Glue can be used as an adhesion promoter or adhesion inhibitor, depending on how you utilize it. This appears to be PLA. PLA does not need glue. If you are having issues with PLA sticking to a PEI bed, personally, I like to take a little bit of alcohol, a little bit of water, and some 2000 grit sandpaper or higher and lightly scuff up the build surface. You can also use a magic eraser. We'll link to all of that stuff in the description as always, and that can help kind of buff some reasonably fine scratches into your build plate. Now, yes, over time that will start to damage it if you do it often. Don't do it often and you won't have this problem, but that should enable better adhesion. But looking at this failure, I don't think this thing leveled all that well. We see bottom layers that didn't fuse with perimeters. I think somebody started this print, did not watch their first layer, and went home. Don't leave printers unattended. Even school teachers, please, especially school teachers. Because what happens when you get a fail like this and you don't know how to fix it and there's no student that can help you? You got to admit to higher ups that you ran something that's effectively a fire hazard when you shouldn't have. And even further, if you do get a printer that is a fire hazard, you're gonna get your privileges of cool technology taken away, and we don't want to see that happen. We want to see this badass tech get into the hands of more school kids. Please make sure you watch your first layers, and if it's not right, you can adjust your first layer offset while the Prusa is printing. That's one of the great features about it. It's just a dial. It's not screws and shit that you have to deal with. No, it's just one little dial that moves the whole thing closer or the whole thing farther away. Because it meshed bed levels, it knows where everything already is. It just doesn't know how far away it needs to be for everything to be perfect. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys. Let me know down in those comments what you think of some of these fails. This to me has been one of the best packed Fail Fridays that we've had in a long time. Thanks again to Justin for allowing me to roast you on camera with no ability to defend yourself. And thanks to all the people on Reddit, as well as to Jimmy, one of our patrons, for providing these awesome photos to help us help you make awesome. Don't forget to call your loved ones, and as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. You got failures, I got them too. I've got some help. Let's see if I can help you. Oh god, that's so bad. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video. A massive shout out to our patrons who are listed right next to me. Thank you all so much for what you do to help us continue to make videos this awesome. And if you want to support us to make awesomer videos so I don't have to do this entire video 4 times, I will tell the story on our Patreon. It's a rough one. You can support us directly at patreon.com/3dmusketeers. Right below me is going to be the playlist all about Print Fail Friday, so you can look at other fails, maybe learn some things, laugh a little bit, and cringe every now and then. Whether it's at me or at the fails, you're going to be cringing, so who really cares? And right next to it will be the video all about the E3D Revo, which, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the most awesome hot ends to come out of the industry in the past couple of years. I will see you guys down in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like and get subscribed, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.